I spent my entire life staying silent, hiding what I felt, burying what I wanted, performing strength I didn't always feel. Because silence was safe, silence was expected, silence was survival. But there came a moment when silence became unbearable, when the weight of everything I wasn't saying crushed me, when I finally broke and I spoke my truth, not carefully, not strategically, honestly. Today I'm going to tell you what happened when I finally spoke, not the polished version, the raw one, because speaking your truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just shows you exactly how trapped you are. I was raised to believe that silence is strength, that expressing emotion is weakness, that speaking your truth creates problems. So I learned early to keep everything inside, every doubt, every fear, every moment of loneliness. Every question about whether this life was really mine, I carried it all silently, because that's what was expected. Crown princes don't complain, they don't question, they don't express uncertainty. They carry the weight without flinching, without breaking, without needing anyone to understand. And I did that. For years, I buried everything that hurt, everything that confused me, everything that made me feel human in ways that didn't fit the role. I performed composure while drowning inside. I smiled while carrying grief no one knew about. I fulfilled every duty while feeling completely empty, and no one noticed, or if they did, they didn't ask. Because asking would have meant acknowledging that something was wrong, and nothing is allowed to be wrong with the Crown Prince. He has to be perfect, always. So I pretended, and the pretending became so constant that I forgot what honesty even felt like. I forgot what it felt like to say what I actually thought, to express what I actually felt, to admit that I was struggling. Silence became my default, not a choice, a reflex, and that reflex kept me functional. But it also kept me isolated, completely, utterly alone. The moment I broke wasn't dramatic, it wasn't planned. It just happened. I was with someone I trusted, not family, not an advisor, someone outside the system, someone who had no agenda, no need to protect the image, no reason to keep me performing. We were talking about nothing important, and then they asked a simple question: "Are you okay?" 3 words, simple, direct, and something inside me cracked. Because no one had asked me that in years. No one had looked at me and seen past the role, past the composure, past the performance. No one had cared enough to ask if I was actually okay. And in that moment, I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay for a long time, and I was so tired of pretending. So I didn't. For the first time in years, I didn't pretend. I told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I said, "No, I'm not okay. I haven't been okay in a long time, and I don't know if I'll ever be okay again." The words came out shaking, not because I was crying, but because speaking them felt like breaking a rule I didn't even know I was following. The rule that I had to be fine, always, no matter what. And breaking that rule, even privately, felt dangerous, like I was dismantling something I could never rebuild. But I kept going, because once the truth started coming out, I couldn't stop it. I told them about the marriage I didn't choose, about the woman I lost because duty won, about the loneliness that follows me everywhere, about the weight of living a life that was never mine, about the exhaustion of performing strength when I feel anything but strong. I said everything I had buried, everything I had carried alone, everything I had convinced myself didn't matter. And when I finished, there was silence, not judgment, not pity, just silence. And in that silence, I realized something. Speaking my truth didn't make me feel lighter. It made me feel exposed, vulnerable, terrified. Because now someone knew, someone saw the cracks I had spent years hiding, and I couldn't take it back. The immediate aftermath was relief. For about 10 minutes, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted, like finally being honest, even with one person, had given me permission to breathe. But that relief didn't last, because almost immediately fear replaced it. Fear that I had said too much, fear that speaking my truth had made me weak, fear that the person I trusted would see me differently now, not as the crown prince, as someone broken, someone struggling, someone who wasn't as strong as he appeared. I started regretting it, wishing I could take it back, wishing I had stayed silent, because silence at least was safe. Silence didn't expose me. Silence didn't make me vulnerable. But the truth was out now, and I couldn't bury it again. The person I spoke to didn't judge me. They didn't try to fix me. They just listened. And when I finished, they said something I'll never forget. You've been carrying this alone for too long. It's okay to not be okay. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Those words should have comforted me, but they didn't, because being human in my world is a liability. Humanity is something you're supposed to control, not express, not lean into, not admit. So hearing that it was okay to be human, it felt like permission I didn't know how to accept, because accepting it would mean admitting that I've been wrong, that I've been hurting myself by trying to be perfect, that the strength I've been performing is actually destroying me, and I wasn't ready to admit that. Not fully. Speaking my truth changed me in ways I didn't expect. It didn't make me happier. It didn't solve my problems. It didn't change my circumstances. But it did something else. It made me aware of how much I had been suppressing, aware of how isolated I had become, aware that silence, while safe, was slowly killing me. After that conversation, I started noticing things I had ignored before. How heavy my chest felt at the end of every day. How empty I felt even when surrounded by people. How exhausting it was to perform normalcy constantly. How much I had disconnected from my own emotions. Speaking my truth to one person didn't fix those things, but it made me see them clearly. And seeing them clearly meant I could no longer pretend they didn't exist. I also started questioning things I had accepted without thought. Why was I so afraid of being honest? Why did vulnerability feel like failure? Why had I convinced myself that suffering in silence was strength? Those questions didn't have easy answers, but asking them, finally asking them, was a start. I also realized something painful, that speaking my truth to one person wasn't enough, because the people who actually needed to hear it, my family, my father, the system that shaped me, they would never listen, because they don't see my truth as valid. They see it as weakness, as complaint, as evidence that I'm not ready for the role. So even though I spoke my truth, nothing around me changed. The expectations remained, the pressure remained, the loneliness remained. The only thing that changed was me. I could no longer pretend I was okay. I could no longer bury the pain as effectively. I could no longer perform strength without feeling the cost. And that awareness, that brute undeniable awareness, made everything harder, not easier. Speaking my truth came with a cost I didn't anticipate. It made me more fragile, not weaker, but more aware of how fragile I've always been. Before I could pretend the weight wasn't crushing me. After I couldn't. Before I could bury emotion and move forward. After emotion stayed closer to the surface. Before I could perform normalcy without thinking. After, every performance felt exhausting, because once you acknowledge pain, you can't unacknowledge it. Once you admit you're struggling, you can't go back to pretending you're fine. Once you speak your truth, silence stops protecting you. It just isolates you more. I also learned that honesty doesn't always bring connection. Sometimes it brings distance, because people don't know what to do with your pain. They don't know how to respond, so they pull back. Not cruelly, uncomfortably, And that discomfort creates space, the same space I was trying to close by being honest. I found myself more alone after speaking my truth than I was before, not because people abandoned me, but because I had exposed something they didn't know how to handle, and I didn't know how to help them handle it. So we just existed in awkward distance, aware of the truth, unable to process it together. What happened when I finally spoke my truth taught me something I'll never forget. That honesty doesn't set you free. It just shows you the cage more clearly. Speaking my truth didn't change my circumstances. It didn't give me more freedom. It didn't make my life easier. It just made me more aware of what I can't change. And that awareness is both a gift and a curse. A gift because I'm no longer lying to myself. I know what I feel. I know what I've lost. I know what this life costs. And that knowledge, painful as it is better than delusion. But it's also a curse because knowing what you've lost without being able to get it back, that's torture. Knowing what you need without being able to ask for it, that's isolation. Knowing the truth without being able to change it, that's helplessness. I also learned that speaking your truth is not a one-time event. It's a practice. You don't speak it once and then you're healed. You have to keep speaking it, keep acknowledging it, keep refusing to bury it. And that's exhausting because it means constantly fighting the instinct to perform, to hide, to go back to silence. But I can't, not anymore, because I know now what silence costs, and I'm not willing to pay that price again, even if honesty costs me differently. I don't speak my truth publicly. I can't. The cost would be too high, but I speak it privately now, in small moments, with people I trust, in my poetry, in the quiet hours when I'm alone. I don't pretend I'm fine anymore, not to myself. And slowly, very slowly, I'm learning to live with that, to be okay with not being okay, to accept that this life is hard, that it costs me daily, that I'm struggling, and that struggling doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. I'm also learning that truth doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes speaking it to yourself is enough, admitting it in the mirror, writing it on paper, saying it out loud when no one else is listening. That honesty, private, unwitnessed honesty, that's where healing starts, not in grand confessions, but in small admissions, one truth at a time. What happened when I finally spoke my truth? I didn't get free. I got aware of how much I've been carrying, aware of how isolated I've become, aware that silence, while safe, was destroying me. Speaking my truth didn't change my life. It changed me. It made me stop pretending, stop performing strength I don't feel, stop burying pain that deserves acknowledgement. And that change, that small internal change, is the only freedom I have. Not freedom from duty, not freedom from expectation, but freedom from the lie that I have to be perfect, that I have to carry everything alone, that admitting struggle makes me weak. I spoke my truth, and it didn't save me, but it did remind me I'm human, and being human, even in a life designed to erase humanity, that's the one thing I refuse to lose, so I'll keep speaking. Not loudly, not publicly, but honestly, to myself, to the people I trust, to the page, because speaking your truth doesn't always set you free, but it does keep you from disappearing completely, and right now, that's enough. If you've ever been afraid to speak your truth, know this: honesty won't fix everything, but silence will slowly destroy you. And between the two, honesty, even when painful, is always braver. Thank you for listening.